My name is Gracie Duval. I'm 33 years old, and for 15 years, my parents treated me like the embarrassing failure nobody mentioned unless they needed someone to blame. They assumed I had struggled since high school, lived in a cramped apartment, and spent my days entering numbers into spreadsheets for small businesses. They never asked what company employed me, why I traveled so often, or why certain phone calls made me leave family gatherings without explanation. As far as they were concerned, I was worthless. Then, at 4:17 on a Thursday afternoon, Grandma sent me 6 words that made me rise so fast my chair struck the wall. "Bring the chocolate cake and blue candles." We had never used that sentence casually. Chocolate cake meant she was being pressured. Blue candles meant legal documents were involved. Together, they meant immediate danger. I called the emergency number used by my task force, opened the sealed file I had prepared months earlier, and drove straight to her house. 29 minutes later, I entered Grandma's dining room with 2 deputies, an adult protection investigator, and a court-authorized evidence team behind me. My parents were standing beside a notary, a property deed, and several banking forms. My father laughed when he saw me. "What are you going to do, Gracie? Balance our checkbook?" I placed my credentials on the table. His laughter died. My mother's hand froze above Grandma's signature line. My father read my title twice, and all the color drained from his face. Before I explain what he whispered, and why the next 30 minutes destroyed every lie they had told about me, "Tell me what time it is where you are, where you're watching from, and what the weather is like there. I want to know how far this story travels." My official title was Lead Forensic Investigator for a joint financial crimes task force specializing in elder exploitation, fiduciary fraud, identity theft, and concealed asset transfers. For 11 years, I had followed money trails that experienced criminals believed were too complicated to expose. I had testified in court, helped recover millions for vulnerable victims, and trained investigators to recognize financial coercion. My parents knew none of it because they had never cared enough to ask. Whenever I said I worked in financial investigations, my father, Raymond, heard bookkeeper. Whenever I mentioned a case, my stepmother, Lorraine, assumed I meant unpaid invoices. Eventually, I stopped correcting them. Grandma Edith was the only relative who knew the truth. 3 months earlier, she had quietly told me that Raymond and Lorraine were pressuring her to sign a broad power of attorney. They had begun opening her mail, questioning her purchases, and telling people she was becoming forgetful. I offered to intervene, but she refused. "If they know you're watching, they'll become more careful," she warned. That afternoon, we created 3 coded phrases. Lemon pie meant an unexpected visit. Chocolate cake meant financial pressure. Blue candles meant legal documents or someone pretending to act with authority. She promised to use the code only if she could not speak freely. Now every fear had become physical evidence. Raymond stood between Grandma and the front door. Lorraine had taken Grandma's phone and placed it beside her purse. A notary sat at the dining table with his stamp uncapped. The papers were not routine financial forms. One transferred Grandma's home into a limited liability company created 6 weeks earlier. Another gave Raymond control over her investments, insurance, medical decisions, and personal property. Grandma's signature appeared on one page, but the ink was still wet. "Nobody touches anything," I said. Raymond looked at the deputies. "This is a private family matter." The adult protection investigator, Talia Marin, answered him. "It stopped being private when the homeowner reported coercion." Lorraine immediately softened her voice. "Edith gets confused. We're helping her simplify things." Grandma looked at me and shook her head. Because I was related to everyone involved, I had already transferred control of the response to Talia. I was present only as the reporting family member, a witness, and the recipient of the distress signal. The evidence team answered to her, not to me. Once Grandma was interviewed away from Raymond and Lorraine, she admitted they had threatened to place her in a residential facility if she refused to sign. Lorraine had told her no judge would believe an elderly woman over her own caregivers. They arrived before lunch, took her phone, and refused to leave. Grandma pretended to use the bathroom, locked the door, and dictated the coded message through her smartwatch. During a protective check, investigators found another set of documents in Raymond's briefcase. Those papers transferred nearly all of Grandma's remaining assets into a trust controlled by him and Lorraine. Several pages had already been stamped by the notary, Curtis Bell, before Grandma signed anything. Curtis claimed he believed everyone had agreed. His hands began trembling when Talia told him the state licensing office would review his conduct. Raymond finally understood that I had not come to argue. I had arrived with procedure, witnesses, and a chain of custody he could not intimidate. He leaned toward me. "You think that badge makes you important? You're still the same disappointment who left this family with nothing." I looked at the deed he had tried to take from his own mother. "I left because you taught me what people become when nobody challenges them." 30 minutes after Grandma sent the message, Raymond and Lorraine were removed from the property under a temporary no-contact directive. My parents had entered that house believing I was powerless. They left knowing every document they touched would now be examined by professionals. Have you ever been underestimated so completely that revealing the truth felt less like revenge and more like finally turning on the lights? An emergency medical evaluation confirmed that Grandma Edith was mentally competent and capable of making independent decisions. That finding mattered because Raymond and Lorraine had spent months creating the opposite impression. They told neighbors she forgot appointments, lost checks, and could no longer live alone. The examples were manufactured. Lorraine moved Grandma's belongings and later found them in strange places. Raymond canceled medical appointments without telling her, then claimed she had forgotten to attend. They were not only trying to seize her assets, they were building a false history that could be used to remove her legal independence. Since I was related to the suspects, I formally removed myself from all investigative decisions. Talia directed the case while I supplied messages, documents, and background information. Her analysts soon identified more than $300,000 in unexplained transfers from Grandma's savings and investment accounts. The money did not move directly to Raymond. It passed through a company called Haven Ridge Senior Services, then into consulting firms and a property management account. Haven Ridge supposedly provided transportation, meal delivery, home maintenance, and administrative care for older clients. In reality, it had no office, employees, vehicles, or service records. Its mailing address was a private box rented by Raymond. Lorraine was connected to one of the consulting firms receiving the money. The withdrawals were disguised as monthly care expenses. Grandma had been billed for transportation even though she still drove, meal delivery despite cooking for herself, and a roof replacement that never happened. Each payment remained below an amount Raymond apparently believed would attract attention. He misunderstood how financial investigations worked. Fraud rarely reveals itself through one enormous transaction. It appears through repetition, matching invoice language, impossible service dates, shared addresses, and companies controlled by the same people. Grandma sat at her kitchen table while Talia explained the findings. She pointed to one transfer. "That was the week your grandfather's scholarship fund closed." Raymond had told her the bank required moving the balance because of tax complications. The scholarship was never funded. The money had paid the overdue mortgage on my parents' house. "He used his father's memorial money to save his home," Grandma said. "You trusted your family," I told her. "That was not your wrongdoing. They planned to exploit that trust." The next morning, Raymond and Lorraine filed an emergency petition claiming Grandma lacked capacity. They accused me of isolating her, controlling her communication, and inventing allegations because I wanted her estate. Their filing described me as an unstable, financially struggling daughter who had created a false law enforcement identity. They included photographs of my modest apartment and my old car. To them, visible luxury was the only proof of success. They could not understand that I lived below my means and protected details about my work. The petition also created a professional issue. My supervisor placed me on administrative reassignment while the claims were reviewed. Raymond immediately told relatives that I had been suspended for impersonating an investigator. Lorraine contacted members of Grandma's church and said I was stealing an inheritance. Grandma's independent attorney, Julian Cross, requested an asset freeze and a neutral forensic review. He then revealed something my parents had not expected. 2 years earlier, Grandma had amended her estate plan so that most of her wealth would support scholarships, housing assistance, and elder fraud education. Neither my parents nor I would control the principal. My inheritance consisted mainly of letters, photographs, and family recipes. Their claim that I was chasing millions collapsed. More importantly, the documents established motive. Raymond had learned he would not receive the fortune he expected, so he tried to seize it before Grandma died. That night, Grandma showed me a black notebook hidden behind her cookbooks. She had recorded missing checks, suspicious visits, threats, and pressure to sign documents. One entry quoted Lorraine saying, "Sign now, or we'll tell the court you can't be trusted alone." Another recorded Raymond admitting that the scholarship money was better used keeping property in the family. "I knew they would call me confused," Grandma said, "so I wrote everything down before they could rewrite it for me." At the back of the notebook were 6 names connected to Haven Ridge. Grandma recognized them from Lorraine's charity committee. The case was no longer only about our family. My parents may have used the same method against older people who had nobody waiting for a secret code. Julian arranged a recorded meeting after Raymond's attorney claimed my parents wanted to resolve the conflict privately. Talia advised me not to attend alone, so Julian, a mediator, and a licensed recorder were present. Raymond and Lorraine arrived dressed as if they were attending a business ceremony. My father wore the suit he used whenever he wanted strangers to assume he was the most powerful person in the room. Lorraine carried a leather folder and smiled politely at the receptionist. Raymond entered, placed an envelope on the table, and pushed it toward me. Inside was a settlement proposal. They offered me $150,000, payment of my remaining student loans, and title to a rental property if I persuaded Grandma to withdraw her allegations. I would sign a confidentiality agreement, claim the distress message had been misunderstood, and tell my employer that family tension had caused me to overreact. Grandma would also reinstate Raymond as her financial agent. "You accused me of chasing an inheritance," I said. "Now you're offering me money to make evidence disappear." Lorraine folded her hands. "We're offering stability. You have never had much of that." She reminded me of my apartment, my car, and the career she believed involved routine paperwork. She still assumed money would accomplish what humiliation could not. I asked Raymond whether he created Haven Ridge. He denied it. I asked why its mailing address belonged to him. He claimed he had registered the company for a friend. I asked why Grandma's money paid his mortgage. He said families helped one another. Each answer weakened the previous one. Lorraine accused me of twisting ordinary transactions because I resented their success. "Instead of becoming something after high school, you disappeared." For years, I had imagined telling them about my awards, cases, and courtroom testimony. Sitting there, I realized their approval no longer mattered. "My career is not a defense against what you did," I said. "Even if I were the failure you describe, Grandma would still deserve protection." Raymond had expected me to seek recognition. Refusing to compete for it removed the last power he believed he held. When I rejected the offer, his tone changed. "You have no idea what evidence can appear when people examine your life." Julian asked whether he was threatening a witness. Raymond smiled. "Everyone has records that can be misunderstood." Lorraine opened her folder and removed printed emails that appeared to show me asking Grandma for money. One requested $50,000 after a business failure. Another thanked Grandma for changing her will. They used my name and an old email address, but I had never written them. One timestamp placed me in Austin when I had been testifying in another state. Imagine these circulating while your employer reviews your conduct. Lorraine said. They had brought fabricated evidence to a recorded legal meeting. Julian ended the discussion and preserved every document. Within hours, my parents filed the emails as evidence supporting their petition. A local online news page received an anonymous copy and published a story titled, "Investigator Accused of Targeting Grandmother's Fortune." Former classmates posted that they had always suspected I exaggerated my career. Raymond's employer publicly praised his integrity, while Lorraine's charity organization stood behind her. Talia's digital forensics specialist quickly discovered that the emails had never existed in an actual account. They were documents designed to resemble printed messages. Metadata connected them to software registered on Lorraine's laptop. The revision history showed that someone using her profile had edited the amounts and dates the night before our meeting. Independent proof arrived from Curtis Bell, the notary. Through his attorney, he admitted Raymond paid him in cash to stamp documents outside Grandma's presence. He also said Lorraine instructed him to describe Grandma as forgetful if anyone questioned the transfers. Curtis had saved text messages because Raymond still owed him money. In one, Raymond wrote, "Once the house is transferred, she can complain from whatever facility we choose." Another from Lorraine said, "Gracie is irrelevant. Nobody listens to her." That evening, Grandma discovered automatically saved voice commands on the smart speaker in her dining room. One recording captured Lorraine telling Raymond to hurry because the useless daughter might visit. Another captured them discussing how to explain the signature if Grandma denied giving consent. Their plan depended on believing I was too insignificant to challenge them. That belief had made them careless. Would you forgive people who offered to buy your silence and then tried to destroy your life when you refused? The first contested hearing began in a courtroom filled with relatives, church members, reporters, and employees from Raymond's firm. My parents had invited an audience because they still believed appearances could overpower evidence. Lorraine wore pale gray and carried a handkerchief she never used. Raymond greeted people in the hallway and described the case as a painful family misunderstanding. When I arrived beside Julian, conversation stopped. Several people stared as though they expected the supposedly desperate daughter to collapse. Their attorney presented the fabricated emails first. He argued that I had manipulated Grandma because I wanted her estate. He displayed photographs of me entering her home, visiting a bank box, and meeting Julian. Every activity had a legitimate explanation, but stripped of context, the images looked suspicious. He repeatedly called my administrative reassignment a professional suspension. Julian corrected him, and the judge warned both sides not to misrepresent my employment status. When I testified, the attorney asked why I had hidden my career from my parents. "I didn't hide it," I answered. "They never showed interest, and I stopped volunteering details." He asked whether I considered myself more intelligent than them. "That has nothing to do with Grandma's missing money." He asked whether I wanted revenge for being overlooked. I wanted accountability. Revenge would mean inventing evidence to punish someone. Accountability means presenting authentic evidence and allowing the court to decide. Lorraine's expression tightened. Julian called the digital forensics expert, who explained that the emails had been assembled as documents. He displayed revision histories, registration data, and formatting differences. One early version included the note, "Change amount after R confirms." The defense argued that the files might have been converted for printing. Julian then produced travel records, courthouse logs, and a transcript proving I was hundreds of miles away when one message claimed I had met Grandma in Austin. Curtis testified next. He admitted notarizing documents without witnessing signatures and receiving cash from Raymond. My parents' attorney called him dishonest. Curtis nodded. That's why I kept the messages. Julian displayed Raymond's statement about moving Grandma into a facility after the house transfer. My father stared at the table. Lorraine looked toward the courtroom door. The strongest witness was Grandma Edith. My parents had portrayed her as confused and fragile. She walked to the witness stand carrying her notebook, answered every question clearly, and explained our distress code. I created it because I feared my phone would be taken, she said. That is exactly what happened. Raymond's attorney suggested I had influenced her interpretation of ordinary help. Ordinary help does not require taking someone's phone, blocking the door, or bringing a notary with stamped papers, Grandma replied. She identified every transaction she had authorized and every payment she had not. Her notebook matched the banking records. When she described the threats about residential care, Lorraine began crying for the reporters. Grandma did not look at her. I loved them. That is why it took me too long to accept what they were doing. Love explains my hesitation. It does not erase their choices. Julian then presented the estate plan, proving that neither I nor my parents would control Grandma's fortune. He also introduced an email Raymond had sent after learning about the charitable trust. Raymond complained that his mother was wasting family wealth on strangers and asked whether the assets could be transferred before the trust became irrevocable. The judge froze Havenridge's accounts, barred my parents from contacting Grandma, appointed an independent fiduciary to monitor her assets, and referred the forged documents to criminal authorities. Grandma retained control over her life. We had never asked the court to give that control to me. Outside, Raymond told reporters that I had weaponized my position to destroy a loving family. Lorraine whispered that she prayed I would receive help. Their performance created another wave of public sympathy. Then Raymond's employer reviewed the accounts tied to Havenridge. An auditor discovered that several shell companies had also received transfers from elderly clients at the firm. One client had paid for non-existent property management. Another liquidated an account after Raymond claimed new regulations required it. A third died, believing her savings remained in a protected trust. Talia called me that night. We may have 19 victims. My agency soon cleared me of impersonation, improper access, and financial solicitation. It confirmed that my credentials were legitimate and that I had recused myself immediately. Grandma later opened an old recipe box and removed a flash drive wrapped in wax paper. She had scanned invoices, checks, letters, and statements at the library. She had also recorded conversations whenever Raymond discussed her property. One recording captured Lorraine saying, "People believe success. They'll look at our house, look at her apartment, and decide who is credible." Raymond answered, "Once Edith signs, Gracie can scream all she wants." They had mistaken expensive surroundings for proof of honesty. Now those surroundings were connected directly to stolen money. Over the next 6 weeks, the investigation expanded to include bank examiners, prosecutors, licensing authorities, and digital forensics specialists. Havenridge had been designed to extract money without creating one obvious theft. Raymond identified potential victims through his financial advisory work. Lorraine approached them through charities, church groups, and volunteer programs. Once they gained someone's trust, Havenridge began charging small service fees. The invoices increased gradually. Raymond then encouraged clients to move investments into accounts he claimed were easier to manage. If anyone questioned missing money, Lorraine documented ordinary mistakes as evidence of declining mental capacity. Grandma was their most valuable target because they believed family authority would protect them. They expected neighbors to accept that a devoted son was helping his mother. They expected Grandma to feel ashamed of accusing relatives. Above all, they expected me to remain irrelevant. The final hearing began after investigators searched my parents' home, Raymond's office, Lorraine's laptop, and Havenridge's mailbox. Raymond had been fired and his professional licenses suspended. Lorraine had resigned from every charity board connected to her. Their house and accounts were under court control. Their last defense relied on a psychological report claiming Grandma had progressive cognitive impairment. The report appeared to be signed by a specialist who evaluated her 8 months earlier. Then the doctor testified. She had never written it. Her genuine evaluation found no condition affecting Grandma's legal capacity. The false version copied portions of her report, reversed the conclusion, and added a scanned signature. Metadata traced the altered file to Raymond's home computer. Revision records showed Lorraine changed the diagnosis 3 days before the hearing. The smart speaker recordings followed. In one clip, Raymond explained how they would remove Grandma after taking the house. Once Havenridge owns it, we tell her maintenance is too expensive. Lorraine asked what would happen if Grandma contacted me. Gracie investigates receipts for a living, he said. She couldn't challenge us if she tried. Another recording was worse. Lorraine worried Grandma might reveal the threats to a doctor. Raymond replied, "Establish confusion first. Repeat it long enough, and every denial becomes proof." Their method was simple. Accuse Grandma of confusion, then use her objections as evidence that she was confused. A forensic accountant connected funds from 19 victims to my parents' mortgage, luxury travel, credit cards, charity donations, and investment losses. Raymond's respected image had been financed with diverted money. Their final collapse began when Raymond asked to address the court. Against his attorney's advice, he blamed Lorraine. He claimed she created Havenridge and handled the victims. Lorraine immediately stood and accused Raymond of designing every transfer. They shouted across the table and revealed details prosecutors had not yet introduced. Raymond mentioned the private mailbox. Lorraine mentioned the cash paid to Curtis. Their attorney closed his eyes while the judge warned that their statements could be used against them. During a recess, Raymond approached me before a deputy stepped between us. "Tell them this got out of control," he said. "Tell them we were protecting Edith. Are you sorry for taking the scholarship money? We can replace the money. Are you sorry for threatening her? Families say things under stress. Are you sorry for fabricating evidence against me?" His face hardened. "You forced us to defend ourselves." Even while asking for help, he blamed me. Lorraine waited until Raymond returned to court. "You don't want your father in prison," she whispered. "Think about what people will say about this family." For 15 years they had used shame to keep me silent. Now she offered the same shame as a reason to protect them. "Family is the word you use whenever you need silence," I said. "It does not erase evidence." The judge ruled that Grandma was competent and had been subjected to financial exploitation, coercion, forged documents, and attempted property theft. He permanently invalidated every authority granted to Raymond and Lorraine, maintained the asset freeze, and ordered all suspected records preserved for criminal prosecution. Before ending the hearing, he addressed them directly. Concern for an aging relative is demonstrated through consent and transparency. It is not demonstrated through isolation, falsified medical reports, fabricated correspondence, or concealed transfers. Investigators then served Raymond and Lorraine with warrants involving fraud, exploitation of vulnerable adults, conspiracy, forgery, money laundering, and evidence fabrication. Their collapse was quiet. Raymond handed his watch to his attorney. Lorraine looked around for a familiar face willing to meet her eyes. The charity members who once defended her stared at the floor. Employees from Raymond's former firm moved away from him. As deputies led them toward separate exits, Raymond looked at me. "Gracie, do something." It was the first time he had said my name as though it carried power. I did nothing. Interfering would have meant believing family relationships should override the law. My revenge was not destroying them. It was refusing to rescue them from consequences they had designed for other people. The criminal cases took months. Financial prosecutions required each transfer to be authenticated and each victim to be heard. Raymond and Lorraine remained under strict conditions while their accounts and property stayed frozen. Their house was sold after a court-appointed receiver confirmed that stolen money had funded mortgage payments and renovations. The proceeds entered a restitution fund. Their vehicles were surrendered. Raymond lost his licenses permanently. Lorraine's name disappeared from donor plaques, charity boards, and community awards. Raymond eventually pleaded guilty after prosecutors presented the banking records, recordings, forged reports, notary messages, and victim testimony. Lorraine initially prepared for trial but changed course when the evidence from her laptop made denial impossible. Their sentences were substantial. Raymond received more time because he used his professional position to organize the scheme. Lorraine received a shorter sentence, followed by supervision and a permanent prohibition against managing another person's finances. Some relatives called me unforgiving. One aunt said I should have persuaded prosecutors to handle the matter privately. Which of the 19 victims should receive less justice to protect our family name? I asked. She had no answer. Another relative said Raymond probably panicked when he encountered financial trouble. I reminded him that panic might explain one desperate action. It did not explain shell companies, forged medical records, fake emails, paid notarizations, and years of targeting vulnerable people. My agency restored me to active duty after completing its review. Later, I helped develop a training program on family-based financial coercion. It taught investigators to recognize manufactured incapacity, isolation, false caregiving narratives, and reputational manipulation. Grandma agreed to record an educational interview. I was frightened, she said, but fear and incompetence are not the same thing. The scholarship fund Raymond had raided was restored and expanded through restitution and donations. It supported students studying accounting, social work, and elder advocacy. Grandma remained in her home, hired an independent financial manager, and installed security systems she controlled herself. She traveled, attended classes, and volunteered with a support group for people facing financial pressure from relatives. Nearly a year after the distress message, she handed me her old recipe box. Behind the chocolate cake recipe was a letter written after my academy graduation. It said, "Your parents measure people by how useful they are to their plans. Never confuse their measurement with your value. One day, they may discover who you became. That discovery will not be your victory. Your victory will be knowing who you are before they recognize it." For years, part of me had imagined the perfect revelation. I pictured Raymond and Lorraine discovering my title, regretting every insult, and admitting they had been wrong. Their faces did turn white when they saw my credentials. They did learn that the daughter they dismissed had become the professional capable of exposing them. But their recognition healed nothing. People who base respect on status do not suddenly learn love when status appears. They simply change their calculation. The real turning point happened before I entered Grandma's house. It happened when her coded message arrived, and I acted without wondering whether my parents would approve. I trusted my training. I trusted Grandma. Their opinion no longer controlled what I believed about myself. Raymond wrote to me twice after sentencing. His first letter blamed Lorraine, his employer, the economy, and Grandma's estate plan. I did not respond. His second letter said he now understood how much damage he had caused and asked me to visit. I could not tell whether the regret was genuine or whether isolation had taught him better language. I sent one reply. Accountability begins when explanations stop replacing responsibility. Use your time to understand the people you harmed. Do not use me to feel forgiven. Lorraine never apologized. Through a relative, she said she hoped everyone could move forward. In her version, Moving forward meant skipping the part where she admitted what she had done. Grandma declined all contact. "Forgiveness is mine to consider," she said. "Access to my life is mine to deny." On the anniversary of the distress signal, Grandma baked the chocolate cake herself. We placed 2 blue candles on top, not as a warning, but as proof that the code had worked. Talia, Julian, several neighbors, and representatives from the scholarship fund joined us. Grandma raised her coffee cup. "To being believed before it is too late." Nobody mentioned Raymond or Lorraine for the rest of the evening. My parents believed I was worthless because I did not advertise success in a language they respected. They mistook privacy for failure, modesty for weakness, and patience for submission. They believed Grandma's age made her easy to control. They were wrong about both of us. She was observant enough to preserve the truth, and I was prepared enough to act when she called. Their punishment was not only prison, lost property, or public disgrace. It was watching the identities they created dissolve under evidence. Raymond was no longer the respected financial expert. Lorraine was no longer the generous community leader. They became what their records proved they were. Grandma remained exactly who she had always been: intelligent, independent, compassionate, and stronger than the people who tried to define her. I did not win because my parents finally learned my real identity. I won because their opinion stopped being my identity. What would you have done after receiving Grandma's secret distress signal? Would you confront your family privately or bring every hidden document into the light? And when relatives demand forgiveness without accountability, where should compassion end and self-respect begin? Share your answer below, because someone reading your experience may realize that being related to a person never gives them the right to control, exploit, or silence you.
Thank you for staying with us through every part of the story. All events and conflicts are fictional and created only for storytelling, education, and entertainment. We hope it reminds you that your life can become peaceful again, even after people created chaos, confusion, and doubt where trust was supposed to